Welcome back to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx, and we're gonna still discuss the archetypes, the higher major arcana within the tarot deck, those 22 master key cards that unlock the Kabbalah and kind of unlock the zodiac. And astrology and Kabbalah are foundational systems within the Western mystery tradition. And so, kind of like flashcards, your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s, uh, the tarot deck was a codex to reference the tree of life in pathworking as signs and signposts, and also the zodiac is the great will and the forces, uh, to do high magic. And so that would be on the more cosmic level. So the tarot had practical means, but it also had, you know, higher educational means. Uh, so you could think of the tarot as above, so below, as a middle ground between heaven and earth. And it was a system to pass on this information. So it could be used as a teaching aid to help you understand the stars and the zodiac, but it could also help you understand the simple orbit of the earth and the moon and the sun with harvest, like the farmer's almanac, and why people are born a certain way, and it has a lot to do with the seasons. So in very practical how uses, the tarot served as a visual aid to help you organize that information within your mind. So, our minds work with association, and this is really important when you think about thought forms and thought form magic. So, the Egyptians have been noted for the use of thought forms in thought form magic, and it's more popular to believe that the gods don't exist, that they're just archetypes and thought forms and it's all in our mind. Uh, but we really don't know the fullness of the gods. We don't know the fullness of space and the stars. We're still coming from a very limited understanding, and we still are recovering from Puritanism that's taken over the world and has had its hand in shaping what we consider modern society and what we consider okay and normal and strange, weird, and not normal, you know. So we tend to shy away from the idea that the gods actually exist. We shy away that magic is actually real, and we embrace the idea that it's technology and science. And I think a lot of people to be sell their books promoted this angle. It's and the reality is we don't have to polarize it into it's a all or nothing, choose one door. It's either the right or the left. You can actually open both doors, they can both be true. And those doors opening up could actually open up other doors, you know? So I don't have to choose one or the other. I don't have to believe in this is right and this is the way. It's not making a statement about myself. It's not making a statement to make me feel comfortable in the world. It's chaos can exist, uncertainty. You can go into the dark and not be afraid. So we can grow up basically and realize it's always it's going to be beyond you, and it's maybe more a matter of changing perspectives, shifting your view to gain clarity instead of flattening it out into one dimension and limiting your options into to an either or dichotomy. You can gain multiple perspectives. And I think this is the biggest takeaway, especially after this morning's journey towards work, which I was racing to work, uh, getting on the tracks, going downtown, and now suddenly I remembered, oh, I don't show up until later today. So, and during usually when I'm on the treks, I journal to myself on my cell phone to avoid unnecessary contact. And it's kind of a spiritual moment for me. And I was really understanding through my own challenges, which offer their own solutions and increase my awareness. It was, why are relationships with others so challenging? And it's like, oh, it's because I'm only seeing one dimension. I may be only offering up one side of me. They may be offering one or two sides of them, and it leaves you wanting. And so you either get hungry and more curious about that person, you know, because they're like withholding this information, and or you kind of go, well, there's nothing more to them. Let me go drop them for something more interesting. And I was like, wait a minute. What I'm wanting is more perspectives, more layers, kind of like a faceted crystal with the different faces. If I can just see more of this person, it's not really the person anymore that I'm wanting. It's more information and the only way to get it is to shift my perspective. I have to shift my view and get the information there, shift my view and get the information there. And if I'm getting the information from multiple different angles, then that one thing that I'm observing, I can see more of it. I can get that depth perception. I can get that intuitive knowledge, which comes through shifting points of view to have other perspectives, putting it all back together, like reassembling it, into a coherent pattern or thought. It expands my awareness and consciousness, and it's what's called intuitive. It's what's called psychic. When you can, and so then I realized, okay, that responsibility is mine. I can't ask for it when collectively we're still kind of unconscious and maybe afraid to show our multifaceted selves in our everyday 3D life. But I can take that upon myself and start extracting multiple views from every situation. And so I immediately saw the tarot cards, the 22, as 22 facets of a crystal. They tried to do it with the cube of space, but it fell short because it's a cube. And so we can have these like great perspectives and different multidimensional patterns, but we have a tendency to make them linear, looking at them from point to point, not really fulfilling the totality of it, to simultaneously view things at other perspectives at the exact same time offers a penetrating understanding and awareness of what you're looking at. So you can't leave yourself out of the equation. You can't make it linear, or you can't leave it in linear form. You can't then flatten it back out. So I think we have a tendency to flatten everything back out and present that inner information in a very linear form. Pictures or working with the cards, because what does that all mean? Is now you can start to look at your cards as 22 faces of one thing. The whole tarot is one thing. It's a universal pattern. The tree of life is one thing. You're looking at it from different angles and aspects. That means the constellations, the stars, the frequencies of the zodiac are one thing. So understand the oneness. The drop in the ocean and the ocean in the drop, that whole thing still applies to your cards. But let's move on. And a whole new understanding of renaming the cards, updating them to extract real world information and making them practical to everyday life actually happened with the Hermit card. The Hermit card seems to be a pretty big card for me right now and has been. It seems like in solitude, you can open up that creative space and get the downloads, divine inspiration, channeling, reconnect with yourself and your soul and your spirit, your inner fire, your guardian angel. And so, and I actually think of the Hermit card now as like an inner fire. And that type of inner fire is like digestion. So then I can see the relationship, why it's Virgo and why it's digestion. We're digesting information. We're taking in through our senses, our mind. We might be reorganizing some of that stuff through biochemical reactions and enzymes, and we're digesting and we're taking what is useful, strengthening our mind and our body. Then we're discarding the rest. That's the digestive process. It's absorption, but it's kind of in a physical way. So sometimes you have to leave the community, friends and family, and social media. Go fast. Go on a hermitage. Go cloister yourself away in a cave or your bedroom or a good book and digest the information, which leads to gnosis. So your subconscious takes in a lot more information. Your expanded awareness understands things. And so it drops into you. And without that awareness, without honoring your own ability to absorb and digest and cook your own information and make brownies for yourself, you think it's happening in a magical way. Oh, it's my guide who's delivering this divine revelation. It's like, no, you took in the information. You're just allowing your own mind to process it. There's a lot of behind the scenes processes that you don't have the privy to because your awareness is so low. Because as a culture, we're not taught, we're not taught how to look behind the surface of our own workings of our mind. Once again, we're only looking at the surface one-dimensional thing. We say, oh, our mind is our brain. We chop it up into parts and pieces. We look at it kind of as an object. And so let's say I cut the apple. What do I see but another surface? I cut the apple again. What do I see but another surface? I keep cutting it and I'm like, I think I'm seeing through the apple. I've gone layer by layer by layer, part by part by part, angle by angle by angle. And I'm like, all that's revealed is more surfaces of the same dimension. You didn't really cut the apple open. You're always being presented with another surface. So you have to learn how to see through the apple without cutting it open, or have to find a new way of cutting it open. Part of that is the digestion. So the smoke and mirrors, the illusion of images, the illusion of angels, the illusion of visions of the future and the past. There'll always be a glamour effect, a silver screen, a dazzling. You hear the voices, you sense it, and that's being translated and projected back to you on a surface. Understand that is part of it, and then let it be. But then I also understand, because behind the scenes operation is the 99%, and your experience of the behind the scene is 1%. Don't just let it be, and get what you can out of it. But just understand there's so much into the universe that is invisible, that falls out of the spectrum of our senses. And so out of these big cosmic operations and small microscopic operations that are happening and moving the universe, you're somewhere in this mix, and it will move you. It will move your emotions. It will move your thoughts. You will gain understanding. So your mind isn't exactly just your brain. It transcends that into a field of energy, you know? And so, in a really weird way, you have to be okay with not knowing how things work and sitting still and being open and receptive, a feminine principle, and then allow it to drop in, allow it to be birthed within you. Then, and so I would call it like the inner workings are happening. But so you have to learn to develop your inner senses. But then, even when they're developed, realize there'll always be more to understand. There'll always be a great mystery, but it's a lot of behind the scenes operations. And so it takes wisdom and humility. It takes time. And it takes patience. And so I think with the Hermit card, with wisdom comes through age, with through a lifetime of observation and awareness, with putting your prejudice on hold, with cleansing yourself, clearing the screen of duality, lowering your intensity on your opinions, cleaning yourself out, which takes a lifetime. You gain understanding and wisdom, and you feel grateful for that. So there's this quiet power radiating, and knowing more of yourself, to thine own self be true, and the truth of the interconnected workings of the great mystery. So I feel like there's the inner light that radiates called wisdom. And I feel like that is really what the Hermit card is about. On the lower plane, practical level, it's digestion and health and taking care of your physical body and extracting what you need and discarding the rest. So I think it has a lot to do with the filtration process. And so that was a lot of information. It took us 17 minutes to get through one card. But hopefully this helps you understand that in regular fortune telling, they're probably not picking up on digestion. They're probably not picking up on going into a meditation and receiving the truth. When it comes up in a relationship reading, it's there's probably not a lot of self-reflection going on, not a lot of taking responsibility, examining your psychology, hence your filters, doing the inner work, a call to the inner work. They just might say something really superficial, like, this person's ghosting you, or I don't know, who knows. Let's move on. I kind of want to touch back on the Wheel of Fortune, only because I was watching this video on misconceptions of Pisces, and it really sounded very interesting, but it was being presented in a very polarized way. And so I feel like with Pisces, it's a triune of a wisdom. It's the two fish, but we tend to forget the bridge. We tend to forget the ribbon holding them together. That's the Tao. So to really understand Pisces, it's a threefold experience. But he did mention the Wheel of Fortune card under cycles and rhythms of seasons, like the zodiac. And I was like, hold on, because it was all about Jupiter, saying, Pisces is the water temple of Jupiter. I'm like, that's great and all. But if you saw the Wheel of Fortune card the way I see it, I see it as higher education, and it's a book. Like, you could call it the Book of Life, you could call it the Book of Wisdom, you could call it higher knowledge, since Sagittarius rules higher knowledge, which also brings forth higher law. Those higher laws could be the universal forces written, as principles of science, written as principles of psychology or philosophy, and being a good human being. So it makes more sense for the Wheel of Fortune card to actually be the book of forces. It's higher education. So it's going into that universal understanding having access, that knowing. That happens through the receptivity. And Jupiter happens to be still within the night forces. And so usually Jupiter energy has third eye already working, and they kind of have that gnosis. And so hence Jupiter is the guru planet. So it's like the father of us all. People seek the guru energy to replace the absent mother and father in their life. So you're like, why do all these people want a hug from this guru or want to hear their words of assurance? They're kind of getting the blessings of the emperor, the father of fathers. So the sun is the father, but Jupiter is even bigger than the sun. So it's the father of fathers. You're like kind of going to the source. You're going to the fountainhead. Hence, Athena is birthed out of Zeus's forehead or third eye, and she is the goddess of wisdom. So the astrology and the symbols speak in a symbolic language that weave it all together and reinforce why things are from different perspectives. And so then you start talking in the language of symbolism, and then it's coded in occult language, hidden from the masses, because the masses are speaking linear and they're not speaking symbolically, pictorially. They're not speaking with the knowledge of the archetypes. Metaphysical metaphors instead of literal. The metaphors can point to a literal and expand the literal, but they can also stay metaphorical and abstract and encompass broad sweeps of inner working behind the scene material with a brush stroke, with a paint stroke, with a poetic twist. So instead of getting the literal version, you're getting breadth, height, width, depth, breadth. You're getting with an expanded view and understanding. It's hard to put it all in to a linear format, to a simple, outdated computer programming. You have an expanded vocabulary, you have expanded programming for more advanced software. It's hard to put it back into the lower grade, And so that's kind of what's happening with tarot and the user. If you're the model of user isn't very advanced, you're not going to be able to extract all that information. Another word for it is if you have a low bandwidth, it's hard to get the full bandwidth of information available. To do that, you have to be a little bit poetic, a little bit creative, use your imagination, be a symbolist, understand psychology, understand archetypes. But then it just doesn't stay there, because the archetypes are patterns of the universe that kind of are containers for real truths of real forces of real mechanics, but they're being contained in a way that you could possibly understand them. And that understanding is through images, through symbols, through forms. Man's mind is a thought form creator. That's how we understand information, by putting it into form. But doesn't mean that's the only way to understand information. That's just the way we do it. So, all right. So let's move on through our discussion. Let's go to the strength card. We may have talked about it, but now that we've really talked about the Wheel of Fortune, really right now it's just called the Book of the Law or Laws. You really now start to understand the struggle between the lion and the feminine virgin angel type being, where you could say the higher self and the lower self, the primal drives of reproduction and all the urges to survive and live and the glory of the 3D experience. But then there's this whole other part of us this whole other creature that's semi-divine. And this is a struggle that actually happens in Sagittarius. So this is why I related it directly with this card. Um, because we have this higher mind, the unlimited mind, the greater bandwidth. And so you could see kind of an alchemy process going on, a struggle. And so I think the older cards showed more of a struggle. And I think there was like a Greek god who like wrestled a lion, or even Babylonian god wrestling a lion. And so I think those were probably really the image. Uh, and you could say man against self, man against nature, man against the world. And so I think this card directly relates to like the Five of Wands, the Five of Swords, the Five of Pentacles. It relates to the number 5 for sure. And it's like the cosmic struggle, the cosmic dance. It's interaction, it's exchange. And it's the exchange of the higher and the lower, heaven and earth, light and dark. And so with the picture that's being presented in most tarot decks, it looks like peace, benevolence, subjugation in a loving, light way, the animal nature. And there is no peace and loving way. Sometimes you just have to tear up the piece of art. You have to throw away. Some of the transformation process looks ugly, looks vicious, and it requires effort and struggle. So it is better to put like a Herculean person struggling with a mighty dragon or a serpent, or even another self. But I think having it be a creature is even better, because usually what we say, not us, we either condemn it as if the earth is bad and these other life forms are less than, like creatures, which I think is part of Puritanism and Newtonian science, physics, this whole idea that man is separate from nature and can't get along. But the reality is, man struggles. They're not really of the earth or of heaven. There's something in between. And so man struggles between heaven and earth. Ancient Taoists realized this struggle and came up with the 8-element healing modality, and then turned it into the 5 healing modality. So even we see it play out in healing modalities, that 5, the struggle and the balance, was a universal one for man. And it's a universal struggle, and we play it inwardly, we play it against each other, and we play it against the earth, and we play it against the universe. Especially now as we move into the Aquarian energy, we take the struggle out into the universe, with overpopulation. And so these things can take on a collective proportion or an individual proportion. So I would probably rename strength struggle, because it's, or conflict. So renaming your cards, really finding the word that encapsulates all that can really clarify your cards. And it can serve as an anchor to ground in all that information you have on that card. You got to find a very clarifying word to anchor it in. It anchors it into your memory, but then gives you, through association, access to give better readings or have better understanding in your life. So this is what I'm presenting to you in this kind of little tarot series, is helping you, because you're probably not going to get an authentic tarot masterclass. you might go to a class, they present you with rituals of the tree of life and the zodiac. They present you with sheets of lists, maybe you do readings, you go intuitive, and you're trying to fill in blanks. But what you're trying to fill in with your intuition is this information I'm giving you. So it's like a disconnected circuit, and the intuition happens after, or it takes you farther. You first have to have the whole vocabulary. You need to learn to speak it, say it, write it, spell it. Once you're fluent in the language, then your intuition can open up the big book. So a lot of your intuition is just filling in blanks of the how-to manual versus using your intuition to fill in reading the Akashic records, because that's what it is. Okay, that's what you're doing. These are signposts, these are images, help you navigate where you are within the collective information data bank, which happens to be the story of your life. And so these are footnotes, these are the table of contents, these are headers, these are title pages, these are major quotes at the top of the chapter. That's what the tarot deck is into the story of your life. And if you're good at reading it and you go, oh, I've read this book, or I know. So it's like learning how to read a book. You open up, you see the table of contents. Those are the major arcana cards, and it tells you what chapter that is all about. So, and then you can go page by page, you can go paragraph by paragraph, so you're learning how to understand how a book is put together. Instead of using your intuition to try to figure that out, I'm telling you. So now you can use your intuition to fill in the blanks. So part of reading is seeing the letters, seeing the pages, seeing the words, putting it together, building the sentence, making it make sense, putting the whole paragraph together. So it's like an additive force. That's what you use your intuition for. And then when you're reading, you feel like you're in the story. But if you can't even get that far, you can't really read the book yet. And so I'm telling you how to read the book in a practical way that you can understand now, so you can go on a great epic adventure in your life. And these cards can show up and you go, that's what chapter I'm on. This is where I'm at in the story. You can get a clue and take the cues from the director, the writer, your higher self.